I'm Judy, 32, and my birthday party was supposed to be perfect. We'd just moved into our new house in Austin, a sprawling place with a backyard big enough for 50 guests. Soft lights hung above, music hummed low, and I felt on top of the world after years of grinding to build my tech startup. My husband had planned every detail from the catered tacos to the custom statue he gave me, a sleek glass figure symbolizing my success. Then my brother showed up late. He didn't say a word, just grabbed a champagne flute and stood in the corner staring. I should have known something was off. Right as I raised my glass to thank everyone, he moved. The champagne flew splashing across the dessert table, and he smashed that statue to the ground. Shards scattered everywhere. He looked me dead in the eye and screamed, "This is the price you pay for acting superior." The backyard went silent except for a kid's gasp. My dad rushed over, wrapped him in a hug, and said, "He just needs to let it out." My husband froze, guests stared, and I said nothing. Not because I was shocked, but because I knew words wouldn't fix this. That night, while everyone slept, I did something no one saw coming. By 8:30 the next morning, when he realized what I'd done, it was too late. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Growing up in Austin, I was always the responsible one, the kid who got straight A's and worked summers to save for college. My brother, though, was different. He was the dreamer, always chasing some big idea but never following through. By the time I was 32, I'd built a tech startup from scratch, coding late nights and pitching to investors who doubted me. It wasn't luck. I worked tirelessly, skipping vacations, missing family dinners, all to make something of myself. Meanwhile, my brother drifted, hopping from one music gig to another, never holding a steady job. 3 years ago, he started asking for money. It began small, $100 here, 200 there. He'd call, voice full of charm, saying he needed studio time or new guitar strings. I gave in, thinking I was helping him chase his dreams. By last count, I'd lent him $15,000, money I'd scraped together from my own savings. He promised to pay me back once his music took off, but his promises were as empty as his bank account. He'd spend it on flashy clothes, late-night parties, or gear he never used. I'd see his Instagram posts, him posing with drinks at bars, not a care in the world, while I was drowning in spreadsheets to keep my company afloat. My husband saw it first. He'd sit me down and say, "You're not his bank." He was right, but I felt guilty. Our parents always leaned on me to look out for my brother, like it was my job to fix his messes. They'd call asking how he was doing, never once checking on me. Dad would say he's just finding his way, and Mom would nod along, her silence louder than words. I kept giving, hoping he'd grow up, but it was like pouring water into a cracked bucket. Last year, things got worse. My startup landed a big contract, and I was working around the clock to deliver. My brother, though, saw my success as his personal ATM. He'd text me late at night asking for cash to cover rent or buy new speakers. I started saying no, but he'd guilt-trip me, saying I was too busy for family. I'd lie awake wondering why I felt responsible for someone who didn't even try. My husband kept pushing me to set boundaries, but it was hard. Family's supposed to stick together, right? A month ago, it all came to a head. My brother called asking for $5,000 to buy a high-end guitar. He swore it'd be the thing to launch his career. I was done. I told him I couldn't keep bailing him out, that he needed to figure it out himself. His voice changed, sharp, bitter. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" he snapped. I didn't answer, just hung up. He didn't call back, but I could feel the tension building like a storm waiting to break. My parents didn't help. Dad sent a text saying I should be patient with my brother. Mom called, her voice soft but pointed, asking why I was being so hard on him. I didn't argue, I just said I was busy. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. My brother had always been jealous ever since we were kids. When I got into college, he'd roll his eyes and say I was showing off. When I started my company, he'd make snide comments about my fancy job. I thought he'd get over it, but that resentment was always there, simmering. My husband warned me he might lash out, but I didn't listen. I kept thinking family meant giving endlessly no matter the cost. I was wrong. The weeks before my birthday were quiet, too quiet. My brother stopped texting, stopped asking for money. I thought maybe he was finally taking responsibility. I let my guard down, planning the party with my husband, excited to celebrate in our new home. I didn't know he was waiting for the perfect moment to make me pay for saying no. That's when everything changed. The night of my birthday felt like it could have been perfect. My husband had spent weeks planning turning our Austin backyard into a warm, inviting space. Guests mingled, sipping drinks and laughing over plates of barbecue. I was in the middle of a conversation with a colleague when I noticed my brother across the yard. He'd shown up late as usual, wearing a faded band tee and jeans that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. He wasn't mingling, just leaning against a tree, his eyes darting around like he was sizing up the crowd. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in my gut. I'd hoped he'd at least act normal for one night. As the evening went on, he got weirder. He grabbed a soda from the cooler, popped it open, and chugged it in one go, slamming the can down hard enough to make heads turn. I caught my husband's eye, and he gave me a look that said, "What's his deal?" I shrugged, not wanting to make a scene. Then, during a lull in the music, my brother walked toward the gift table where a glass statue sat, a delicate piece my husband had picked to mark my startup's success. I thought he was just looking at it, but then he raised his arm. In one swift motion, he smashed it against the table's edge. The crash echoed and every guest froze. Shards of glass glittered on the grass. "You think you're so perfect, don't you?" he shouted, his voice cutting through the silence. He stepped closer, pointing at me. "Always acting like you're above everyone with your fancy house and your big shot company." My stomach twisted, not from shock, but from the weight of his words. He wasn't just angry, he was unraveling years of resentment in front of everyone. My husband moved fast, stepping between us. "Hey, calm down," he said, his voice steady but firm. He put a hand on my brother's shoulder, trying to guide him away. My brother shoved him off hard enough that a few guests gasped. "Don't touch me," he snapped. I could see my husband's jaw tighten, but he didn't push back. He glanced at me silently, asking what I wanted to do. I shook my head slightly, signaling to let it go for now. Then my dad stepped in. He walked over, calm as ever, and put his arms around my brother. "He's just upset," Dad said to the crowd, like it was no big deal. "He's been under a lot of pressure." My mom nodded from a few feet away, her face soft with concern for him, not me. I felt a sting in my chest watching them coddle him while I stood there surrounded by broken glass and stunned guests. Not one of them asked if I was okay. I could have screamed, could have called him out right there. But I didn't. I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and turned to the crowd. "Sorry about that," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let's keep the party going." I nodded to my husband, who signaled the DJ to start the music again. People hesitated, but slowly conversations picked back up. I moved through the crowd, thanking guests, acting like nothing had happened. Inside, though, I was seething. My brother hadn't just ruined a moment, he'd humiliated me in my own home, and my parents had let him. As I poured myself a drink, I caught my brother's eye. He was sitting with Dad now, smirking like he'd won something. I didn't say a word, but I knew one thing for sure: this wasn't over. I wasn't going to let him walk away from this without consequences. After everyone left, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table in our Austin home, the house still smelling faintly of barbecue from the party. My husband was cleaning up stacking plates in the sink, but he stopped when he saw my face. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. I didn't answer right away. I was done being the one who always let things slide. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank account. For years, I'd been funneling money to my brother's so-called music career. $12,000 in the last year alone, wired to an account I'd set up for his studio fees and equipment. He hadn't recorded a single track that I knew of. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the transfer button. My husband sat beside me, not saying a word, but his presence steadied me. With a few clicks, I moved every cent of that 12 grand back to my savings. It felt like cutting a cord I'd been dragging for too long. Then I opened my email. Months ago, I'd connected my brother with a local record label, a small but respected outfit in Austin's music scene. I'd vouched for him, used my startup's reputation to get him a meeting. They'd offered him a contract to produce a demo, a chance most musicians would kill for. I drafted an email to the label's manager, someone I'd met at a networking event. "I'm sorry," I wrote, "but I can no longer recommend my brother for this project. He's not ready." I hit send, my heart pounding but resolute. That contract was his lifeline, and I'd just pulled the plug. I closed my laptop and leaned back, the kitchen clock ticking past midnight. My husband reached for my hand. "You sure about this?" he asked. I nodded. "He crossed a line tonight," I said. "I'm done carrying him." We didn't talk much after that. We went to bed, but I lay awake wondering how my brother would react when he found out. I didn't have to wait long. By 8:30 the next morning, my phone buzzed with a string of texts. They were from him, each one angrier than the last. "You screwed me over," the first one read. "The label just emailed me. They're pulling the contract because of you. Fix this now." Another, "You can't do this to me. I need that money." I scrolled through the messages, his words sharp and desperate. He didn't mention the party, didn't apologize for humiliating me in front of everyone. It was all about him, like always. I set the phone down without replying. My husband was already up making coffee. He glanced at my screen and raised an eyebrow. "He's freaking out, isn't he?" he said. I nodded, sipping my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. "Let him," I said. I wasn't going to engage, not this time. I'd spent years responding to his demands, his tantrums, his guilt trips. But that night, something had shifted. I wasn't just angry, I was free. I went about my day, heading to my startup's office downtown. The team was prepping for a big client pitch, and I threw myself into work, reviewing slides and tweaking code. My phone buzzed again, around noon, another text from my brother. "You're gonna regret this," it read. I didn't flinch. I'd made my choice, and I wasn't backing down. I locked my phone and focused on the meeting, pushing his words out of my mind. The days after my decision felt heavier than I expected. I was in my office reviewing code for a client deadline when my phone rang. It was my dad. I hesitated but picked up, bracing myself. "You need to help your brother," he said, his voice calm but firm, like he was stating a fact. "He's in a tough spot, and you pulling that money hurt him bad." I gripped the phone, my knuckles tight. I wanted to remind him how my brother had humiliated me at my own party, but I didn't. "He's got to figure it out himself," I said, keeping my tone even. Dad sighed long and heavy. "Family doesn't give up on each other," he said, before hanging up. I stared at the screen, his words echoing like a lecture I'd heard too many times. Later that afternoon, my mom texted, "We're family. We stick together. Please think about your brother." It was short, but the guilt trip was clear. I didn't reply. I'd spent years trying to please them, always being the one to fix things, but this time I wasn't budging. My husband noticed my mood when I got home. "They're at it again, aren't they?" he said, pouring me a glass of wine. I nodded, handing him my phone to read Mom's message. He shook his head. "They're enabling him," he said. "You did the right thing." His words grounded me, but I still felt the weight of their expectations. 2 days later, things escalated. I was at my startup's office downtown meeting with my team when my assistant buzzed me. "There's someone here to see you," she said, her voice uneasy. I walked to the lobby, and there was my brother pacing like a caged animal. His hair was a mess and his eyes were wild. "We need to talk," he said, stepping toward me. I didn't move. "Not here," I said, my voice cold. He raised his voice, drawing stares from employees. "You owe me. You can't just ruin my life and walk away." Before I could respond, my husband appeared. He'd been in a nearby meeting and had stopped by. He stepped in front of me, calm but firm. "You need to leave," he told my brother. When my brother didn't budge, my husband nodded to the security guard by the door. The guard approached, hand on his radio, and my brother backed off, muttering under his breath as he stormed out. I went back to my office, my heart racing but my resolve stronger. My husband stayed, checking in with me. "He's not going to stop," he said, his voice low. I nodded, knowing he was right. My brother had always pushed until he got what he wanted, and my parents' support only made him bolder. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to what he might do next. That evening, I got a call from my friend Dale, a colleague at my startup who'd been at the party. "You need to see this," he said, his tone urgent. He sent me a link to a TikTok video. I opened it, and there was my brother sitting in his car ranting to the camera. "My sister thinks she's better than everyone," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "She cut me off, ruined my music career, all because she's jealous of me." He went on, painting himself as the victim, claiming I'd betrayed our family. The video had thousands of views, with comments piling up, some calling me heartless. My stomach churned, not because of the lies, but because he'd taken it public. Dale stayed on the line. "He's been posting stuff like this all day," he said. "I thought you should know." I thanked Dale and hung up my hands, shaking. My husband sat beside me as I showed him the video. "He's trying to turn this into a circus," he said, his jaw tight. I nodded, feeling a mix of anger and exhaustion. My parents' calls and texts, my brother's stunt at my office, and now this video. It was all a coordinated effort to pressure me. But I wasn't going to cave. The drama didn't end with my brother's office stunt. I was in a meeting at my startup going over financials when one of my employees, a young coder named Sarah, approached me during a break. "Have you seen what's trending on TikTok?" she asked, her voice hesitant. I shook my head, confused. She pulled out her phone and showed me a video my brother had posted. He was standing outside a music studio holding a guitar, speaking directly to the camera. "My sister's trying to tear me down," he said, his tone a mix of defiance and charm. "She's got her fancy life, but I'm not giving up. I'm raising money for my next album support. An artist who won't quit." The video ended with a link to a crowdfunding page tagged with phrases like "family drama" and "rise above." It had 20,000 views, and comments poured in. "You're so strong, and don't let her win." I stared at the screen, my mind sharp and clear. He wasn't just playing the victim anymore. He was turning our fight into a brand. I went back to my office, the video looping in my head. My brother wasn't just attacking me. He was rallying strangers to fund his dreams, using my name as the villain. I didn't feel angry. I felt focused. I'd spent years letting him slide, but this was a new level of manipulation. I kept the video to myself for now, not even telling my husband. I needed to think, to plan my next step carefully. That afternoon, I met Dale for lunch at a diner near downtown Austin. He'd been keeping tabs on my brother's antics since the party. Over burgers, he leaned in, his voice low. "Your parents paid off $6,000 of his credit card debt," he said. "I found out from a friend who saw the bank transfer." "They didn't tell you, did they?" I set my fork down, the news hitting like a punch. $6,000. My parents had always bailed him out, but doing it behind my back felt like a deeper betrayal. "No," I said, my voice steady. "They didn't." Dale frowned. "They think he's the one who needs protecting," he said. I nodded, the pieces clicking into place. My parents saw me as the strong one, the one who didn't need help, so they kept pouring their support into him. When I got home, my husband was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. I told him about the debt, and his knife paused mid-cut. "They're enabling him again," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "They're never going to stop." I agreed, but I didn't want to dwell on it. I was done letting their choices control me. Instead, I focused on work, pushing my team to nail our next client pitch. But my brother's latest move kept nagging at me. He wasn't slowing down. He was doubling down. A few days later, I got a call from a contact in Austin's music scene, someone I'd met through my startup's networking events. "Your brother's been reaching out?" she said, her tone cautious. He's pitching to a bigger record label, one with connections in Nashville. Says he's got a story that'll sell records. I thanked her for the heads up, my mind racing. My brother was using his TikTok fame to pitch himself as a struggling artist with a dramatic backstory. He'd even mentioned his crowdfunding campaign, claiming it showed his fan base. I checked the crowdfunding page that night. It had raised a few $100s, not much, but enough to fuel his ego. My husband looked over my shoulder as I scrolled. "He's turning this into a circus," he said, shaking his head. I nodded, but I wasn't rattled. I was calculating. The real showdown was coming. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was sorting through paperwork in the living room when the doorbell rang. My husband glanced at me, his brow furrowed. I opened the door to find my mom and dad standing there, their faces tight with purpose. "We need to talk," Dad said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mom followed, clutching her purse like a shield. I gestured to the couch, my stomach nodding, but I kept my expression neutral. My husband stood by the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching silently. Dad didn't waste time. "You've gone too far," he said, his voice low but sharp. "Your brother's struggling, and you're making it worse. You need to forgive him. Help him get back on his feet." Mom nodded, her eyes soft but insistent. "He's your family," she said. "You can't just turn your back on him." I sat across from them, my hands folded, letting their words settle. I'd heard this before, but hearing it in person in my own home felt like a violation. They weren't here to understand, they were here to demand. My husband spoke before I could. "You're not being fair," he said, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "She's done nothing but support him for years, and he's thrown it back in her face. You saw what he did at the party. You know he's been dragging her name online." He stepped closer, his eyes locked on Dad. "Why is it always her job to fix him?" Mom flinched, but Dad's jaw tightened. "He's trying," Dad said. "He's made mistakes, but he's your brother." I could see my husband's hands clench, his patience fraying. "He's not trying," he shot back. "He's manipulating everyone, and you're letting him." I raised a hand, signaling my husband to pause. I looked at my parents, my voice calm but firm. "I'm done," I said. "I've given him money, time, connections, everything. He's used it to hurt me, to hurt us. I'm not paying for his life anymore." Mom's eyes widened. "You don't mean that," she said, her voice trembling. "You're his sister." I didn't waver. "I mean it," I said. "He's on his own." Dad leaned forward, his face red. "You're being selfish," he said. I didn't flinch. I'd carried their expectations for too long, and I was done bending. The room went quiet, the weight of my words sinking in. Mom started to speak, but I cut her off. "I love you both," I said, "but I'm not responsible for his choices. You can't keep asking me to be." My husband moved to my side, his hand on my shoulder, a silent show of support. My parents sat there stunned, but they didn't argue. They left shortly after, their silence louder than any words. A week later, I got a call from my contact in the music scene. "Your brother's deal fell through," she said. The new label passed on him. They didn't think he had the work ethic. I wasn't surprised. His crowdfunding campaign had fizzled out, barely hitting $1,000. I heard through Dale that my brother had taken a part-time job at a local coffee shop, bussing tables to make ends meet. I didn't feel triumph, just a strange sense of finality. He'd built his whole image on blaming me, but it hadn't gotten him anywhere. I sat with my husband that night, the house quiet around us. "You did what you had to," he said, his voice soft. I nodded, staring at the ceiling. I'd spent years trying to hold my family together, but I'd finally chosen myself. It didn't feel good, but it felt right. Life took a quieter turn. My husband and I stood in our nearly empty Austin home, surrounded by packed boxes, ready to move to a smaller house in the suburbs. The decision to leave our old place wasn't just about space, it was about starting fresh, away from the chaos that had defined the past few months. I walked through the rooms one last time, the walls bear the echoes of that disastrous party long gone. My husband squeezed my hand as we locked the door behind us. "This is the right move," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, feeling a weight lift even if just a little. We'd made another choice too, one that was harder but necessary. I stopped answering calls from my parents and blocked my brother's number. Their messages, once a constant buzz on my phone, had dwindled after our last confrontation. I didn't hate them, but I couldn't keep carrying their expectations. My husband supported me setting up call filters on our new landline to keep things peaceful. We didn't tell anyone our new address, not even Dale, though I trusted him. It wasn't about secrecy, it was about protecting our space, our sanity. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my brother was still working at the coffee shop, wiping down tables and steaming milk for lattes. His music dreams hadn't panned out, and his crowdfunding page had stalled, forgotten by the internet. I didn't feel satisfaction or pity, just distance. He'd built his life on blaming others, and I wasn't going to be part of that cycle anymore. My parents hadn't reached out since they'd left our house, and I didn't expect them to. They'd chosen their side, and I'd chosen mine. As we settled into our new home, a cozy place with a backyard and cedar trees, I started to see things differently. I'd always thought family meant giving everything no matter the cost. Growing up, I'd been taught to put them first, to fix their problems, to keep the peace. But that belief had trapped me, draining my energy, my money, my peace. Standing up to my brother then, my parents showed me that family isn't an obligation without limits. It's a choice, one that should respect everyone involved. I'd spent years feeling guilty for wanting my own life, but now I saw it clearly. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was survival. One evening, my husband and I sat on our new porch, sipping iced tea and watching the sunset. The air smelled of fresh grass, a far cry from the city noise we'd left behind. "We should take a trip," he said, his eyes bright with an idea. "Somewhere warm, just us." I smiled, the first real smile in weeks. "Hawaii," I said, picturing beaches and clear skies. We spent the night planning, pulling up photos of Maui, booking flights, and choosing a small resort by the ocean. It felt like a promise to ourselves, to the life we wanted. We laughed as we debated snorkeling versus hiking, the kind of light-hearted talk we hadn't had in months. The next morning, I woke up early, the house quiet except for the hum of the coffee maker. I stood in the kitchen looking out at the backyard and felt something new, calm. My startup was thriving, our new home was ours, and my husband and I were building something real. I didn't need my family's approval to feel whole. I'd learned that protecting my peace meant saying no even to the people I'd once thought I owed everything. My brother's choices were his own, and my parents' loyalty to him wasn't my burden to carry. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I knew one thing: I'd never again let someone else's chaos define my life. Setting boundaries had given me back my freedom, and I was ready to live it.